Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
And listeners, welcome back to the Farm for Profit Podcast. Do you think the listeners know how many times we practice our intros?
I don't think you practice them.
I don't think you do.
No.
Well, this is the second time we're doing this intro.
It is. This is Corey. Tanner's here. Dave just swung in, and we got
Flew in.
Yeah, and we got a guest that has been on the show before. But before that, we always like our listeners to interact with us. Anywhere you're listening to this right now, please stop and go give us a 5-star review.
That guy literally stopped when you said that.
You stop. Go give us a 5-star review right now. No,
Stop.
5-star.
Like, rate, review, all that kind of stuff. We love interaction. Comment. It all helps. Helps the algorithm. And 515-207-9640. You can interact with us there. That goes direct to Tanner, and we love it when you call him in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
Right?
that's fine. I love to communicate with our listeners anytime that we can communicate with our listeners.
Yep.
This is one of those topics that is a listener suggestion. There's a lot of things going on this year. Obviously, we know that commodity prices and margins are not looking super positive.
Especially this morning.
Yeah, they're on. Corn's on sale today.
In the moment.
Tariff talks.
But we still understand that we have to produce a really great crop. We have to make sure that we do the best that we can do in the field because that's our job.
A top crop, if you will.
It is.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, I like that.
So, we're going to talk agronomy.
We're going to talk agronomy. And
our friend.
Our friend and a guest that can make it, in my opinion, relatable to anybody because if he can help me understand it, I feel like a majority of our audience can too. So, Gunny, welcome back to the podcast.
All right. Thank you, Tanner. Happy to be here.
Also appreciate you sitting there silently for 15 minutes while we did our intro and over again. That took a lot of discipline.
You got this.
Hey, thanks for having us at the booth here at Commodity Classic. Really appreciate that. For our listeners who didn't listen to the first time that we talked, give an introduction to yourself, what your role is, and then we'll dive deeper into what AgX is.
Right on. So, Tanner, my name is Gunther Krebs. Everybody calls me Gunny. I'm the Executive Vice President of AgXplore. I wear many hats at AgXplore, so I oversee the marketing, the regulatory, the research, the agronomy, the product development is where I spend most of my time, and a lot on the education side of things, right? So I'm happy to be here. Basically, I touch about everything except for managing the sales force. I don't like herding cats. Managing people is not my thing.
Yeah.
So growing plants, that's my thing.
Yeah.
Right? So
Sounds like the right guy to talk to.
Farm background, grew up on a farm in northern Indiana. My wife and I, family, we own a little farm ground in Rossville, Indiana. So we're happy to be here. Happy to have you guys part of our booth here at Commodity Classic 2025.
Thank you for having us. This has been really fun. It's an amazing booth. You got some cool plants that we'll talk about here later. I really love what your atmosphere is here at AgXplore.
Thank you.
I love what you guys got going. I love that you're education first. It seems like I don't know that I've heard one product be thrown around like in the conversations, that you're always just trying to help whoever you're talking to.
Corey, if you look around our booth, do you see outside of the product literature, do you see a single advertisement for a product?
I do not.
But you see some plants out there that tell a story, don't you?
I do.
Right? The story of why you need to do certain things to plants.
Some pretty cool plants.
Where have you guys been?
We just got back from the Custom Harvesters event where operators from across the country couldn't stop talking about Steinbauer performance modules.
Yeah, they're seeing up to 25% more power, better fuel efficiency, all with smarter injector duration and not altering the rail pressure for safe and reliable performance.
If you're looking to maximize your machine's potential, go to steinbauer.us and tell them Farm for Profit sent you to get yours today.
I didn't notice that until he pointed that out. Right. But that's probably why it feels so inviting. Like it is set up for a conversation.
Yeah.
So we get to virtually have a conversation now with our audience.
We do.
Give a quick high level of what AgX is and how AgX can benefit the farmer, and then we'll talk agronomy and we'll get all the messaging.
Right on. So quickly, guys, AgXplore is a family-owned business based out of Scott City, Missouri, which is down by Cape Girardeau. We have two locations, started in Parma, which is in the middle of a cotton field, right about an hour south of Scott City. Our new production facilities in Scott City. We are family-owned again, so Tim Gutwein is the owner. He and I are partners on some production side of things. But we focus in three categories. So we have a very robust adjuvant portfolio that everybody needs, right? Mm-hmm. So your non-ionics, your oils, those type products.
Yep.
And then we have our fertilizer management, which is our biggest portfolio with our Contain family of actually managing nitrogen and working with the soil ecology versus against it. And a lot of great stuff that's going to be published. We're going to have a PhD or peer-reviewed published research coming in that category this year, which I'm super excited about because nobody in our space does that. And then our fastest growing category is the stuff that I'm going to geek out on today. And this is our plant nutrition space, our opportunity to actually manage a crop from start to finish. And I'm going to do my best today to spend my time focusing on what AgXplore really focuses on, and that's being the best in education. Right? So if we want to be known for anything, we want our legacy to be known as the best educator in this business.
Just briefly describe the scope, like what crops, kind of area you guys are servicing.
So we are a predominantly row crop business. We do have some business in the specialty markets in California and Florida. But guys, we're corn, soybeans, wheat, alfalfa, cotton, rice, right? Those are our primary crops. So canola up north. So we do a lot in that market as well. So we're broad acre agriculture is what we are.
Okay. And mainly U.S.?
Mainly U.S. We've got a lot of business in California. I'm sorry, not California.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? You know what? That is a foreign country. If you've ever dealt there, guys, those of you in California watching this, you know what I'm saying.
You know, there's a lot of crops there.
But California, the Canadian market, we do a lot in Canada, and then we do a little bit in South America and a little bit over in Europe as well.
Okay. That helps.
Yeah.
That sets the stage.
Yeah.
So California, Canada, South America, and Europe. In that order. Those are our foreign markets.
I tell you what, we've been to California and to the Tulare World Ag Expo, and they have, over 200 crops in that valley?
Yep.
It was mind-blowing.
Crazy.
It's
Tons
awesome.
of them.
Yeah.
A lot of high-value crops.
I've been to the Central Valley over 30 times in my career. You fly into like Fresno and you're over these dead mountains, and all of a sudden you hit the Garden of Eden and boom. And those big tanks that look like oil tanks, those are wine tanks.
We flew into L.A., which was a mistake.
Oh, my gosh.
But then we got to drive to Tulare, so that was a very cool
on.
drive. Yeah.
Getting out of L.A. was not cool.
No, getting back into it's less cool.
We probably could have walked faster.
We ended up switching our flight to a different airport because it was so bad.
Good call. Good call.
Yep.
So as we dive into this, Dave, you're already writing notes, and I'm excited to be able to give some advice to our listeners that it's their first or second year farming like Dave, or somebody that's been doing it for their entire career and walking away from this.
Yeah, Dave, you weren't on the first one with Gunny, were you?
Yeah, in the studio.
You were? Okay.
We've done a couple in the studio, yeah.
Were you farming at that time yet? Or that was your first crop?
That was the first crop.
Okay.
First crop.
All right. So he gets to ask kind of the novice questions.
So I want to kick it off because there was one thing that really stuck out to me in that last conversation, and I'm going to encourage every listener to go back and pick that up. But if they don't take the time to go back to that, when you started talking about the 5 phases, that's something that really I thought laid things out very nicely for the entire group. So hit that. Go ahead and kick it off.
So I love to give presentations to the farmers, and one of the questions I love to ask is, when does next year's crop start? And I get a lot of guesses, right? But it's really, to me, I contend next year start when the harvester leaves the field. So in a corn acre, when the combine pulls out of that field, that's when that first phase starts. And I talk about managing a crop all the way from that moment that combine leaves to the next combine comes in. So that first phase we call a foundational phase, and that's a combine to planter. So everything that you do to that farm before you stick a seed in that dirt, right? So this is stuff that I think about in the foundational phase of the fertilizer management, soil sampling, residue management. You know, here's a fun fact for you, Dave. That residue that you see out there, you got any idea what the value in fertilizer is out there?
Well, because I chop silage, I'm guessing there's a lot because I had to put a lot more back on.
Right. So, so you know, Kansas State did a study back in 2009.
I have no idea the number, though.
Yeah, so I want to give you an idea because this is a big misunderstanding. That residue that's sitting out there, back in 2009, Kansas State did a study. Pretty similar economics to what we have today, but they said there was on a 200 bushel corn crop, there is over $125 worth of nutrient value sitting in organic fertilizer, which is not plant available, right? So Corey, back when we was kids, right? I used to ride down a gravel road or the end rows in a 4-wheeler. My dad would be shelling corn, and I'd see corn stalks dirt, corn stalks dirt, corn stalks dirt. You remember those days?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
We don't see that anymore.
Nope.
These genetic suppliers done such a good job of creating such plant biomass. There's so much there to work with, and that's real money, right? I contend it's probably a little higher than 25 today. It's probably closer to 140, 150. But that residue management's a hot topic. You know, we even got a model of dirt with some residue back there that shares the story on the importance of returning that and recycling it back to that next year's crop.
Right, and we held a award ceremony for you guys the other night, and there was a lot higher bushels talking than 200.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's, when we talk about, we had one that was knocking the door of 320. Think about that nutrient value that's sitting out there.
Right.
Here's a fun one I love to ask guys that are in corn soybean rotation. So do you have corn soybean rotation on where you're at?
Yes.
So if you shell corn and come back into spring, do you see the corn stalk still out there the next year?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Yep.
What about the next year when you come back and put corn on it? 2 years later, do you still see some of the
If
corn
it's
stalks?
no-till, you can. Yeah.
You can, right? 80% of the potassium that's stored in a corn plant is stored in the stalk.
Oh.
So think about that. There's still fertilizer sitting in that stalk 2 years later. So just things to think about. There's a lot of biologicals in that space, tillage management that you can do to help recycle those nutrients. But that first phase, guys, is basically everything that we do to that soil, right, before we stick a seed in the dirt.
Okay.
That second phase is what I call the establishment phase. The establishment phase is all about getting that plant germinated and getting an even stand. So, David, you now farm, buddy. Mm-hmm. So let's imagine you've got a field that's right outside your kitchen window. And
or right along the interstate.
Or along the interstate
Yeah,
for everybody to see.
It is.
It literally is.
Would it be fun to wake up in the morning, grab a cup of coffee, look out your window across the interstate, and see half that field up one day, and the other half doesn't come up until 3 days later, and you plant it at the same time?
That'd be bad.
That would be a bad dig, right?
Yep.
What's even worse? What's even worse, guys? What happens if I have a seed that comes up one day, and the one right beside it comes up 3 days later?
It's a weed.
It's a weed, right? So that's going to do nothing more than compete for water and nutrients the rest of the year.
Yep.
So I talk about the importance of getting that crop up and getting it going. And here's another fun fact for you guys. So this is something I've realized from coast to coast, wherever I go. I asked this question: How many root systems are on a corn plant?
2.
2. Bingo. Right? Can you name them?
This is Seminole.
This is cheating. He went to
Yeah,
school
yeah,
for
you got it,
agronomy.
you got it.
This is Seminole and not.
You're almost there. It starts with an N.
Yeah, it starts with an N.
Nodal.
Nodal.
The
That's
nodal,
why, okay,
right?
I was trying to say nodal.
Nodal.
Yeah.
Or the primary. Some people call it the primary.
Yep.
So here's something important to understand. That little baby corn plant, I like to make it personal, right? These are little baby plants, right? When you think about our kids, giving them vitamins and giving them extra nutrients to get them up and getting it going, corn plants are no different, right? That little baby corn plant lives off the nutrients and energy held in that seed, plus whatever it gets out of that seminal root system, that radicle that comes out of that seed. So it's impacting very minimal amount of that soil surface.
Right.
So everything that we can do with technology and fertilizer to lay right on top of that seed or near that seminal root system is ways that I can impact something very important that happens all the way from V3 to V5, and that's ear determination. Right, so that ear determination is that young plant V3 to V5 number of kernels around. And we'll have ovule development past that, but that we can't go back in time and set more kernels around. And it's planting for the guys that have in-furrow or 2x2 starter kits. There's things that we can do with technologies.
Yep.
So that's that establishment phase, getting up and getting it going.
I'm going to say my year and Dave's year last year, just weather-wise, was the worst year for even emergence.
Yes.
We planted corn late April, and then it just turned off wet and cold, and I had seeds coming up 10 days after the first one. It was I was almost sick, knowing how important that is. We finished off okay, right? Better than what I thought in the beginning, but man, that's crazy.
When I first met you, you had a 20-day gap in planting.
That's right.
Yeah.
20-day gap in planting.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah, and I think it ended up being 28 or
28.
yeah,
Was it?
Yeah, 30. It was bad. And the stuff that we planted late, now we always say got to plant it earlier. The stuff that we planted late did really well because it never had a bad day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It came right up and was warm and wasn't flooded.
Yeah.
So,
right on.
Yep.
So you want me to keep going on that?
Yeah, so
So guys, when you come out of that establishment phase, the next phase that AgXplore calls it is the architecture phase. Now here's where the industry calls it the vegetative stage, which I think is way too generic, right? I'm talking about plant structure, like building a plant factory.
Yep.
And I want you to think of this as kind of like our factory that is down in Cape Girardeau in that Scott City. So you want to build a big building. And then you want to build a big building and equip it with the right infrastructure on the inside, the right equipment to be able to produce something efficiently.
Right.
So you're talking like big enough stock as a straw that I can soak up all the good stuff.
You want a root system, you want a stalk for stability and standability, and then you want a big leaf. Right?
Okay.
So let me ask you guys this: what is a leaf?
Solar
a leaf?
panel.
Solar panel, yeah.
Solar panel.
Yeah.
What else is a
See-
leaf, David?
Catches water, I'm going to say.
Catches water, well, from rain, and then drips off and goes
Sure.
to the root system,
Yeah.
and then the root system will take it up. But how about it, Corey? What else is a leaf?
It helps in stress events,
Okay.
right?
Wouldn't it block other weeds growing? Like the more we build the canopy.
All right, so canopy,
So
right? Canopy closure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
David, I'm going to talk about that because that's something that we talk about in soybeans,
Yep.
but we don't really reference it in corn.
Okay.
If we can build a nicer canopy quicker, I think about our shade on the soil to block out weeds, right, to suppress weed.
Mm-hmm.
And then what about in these events that we have some dry growing seasons?
Yep.
What if I can keep that soil shaded, and I can have a cooler soil and a moisture soil, right?
Yep.
Retain that moisture.
Yep.
But leaves are also something else, and this is what most people don't think of. They're like a fuel tank. So, Corey, you farm, right?
Storage.
You
Yeah.
farm, right?
Yes.
Do you just have a 100-gallon diesel fuel tank on your farm?
No.
Why not?
Because we need more than that. That wouldn't even fill the combine up.
You can't wait on the co-op to come drop 100-gallon diesel drops.
No.
Every time you need it, right? When it's
Yeah.
planting season, your tractors need fuel. When it's harvest season, the combines, the catch carts, the semis, everybody needs fuel
Yeah.
when it's go time. Plants are no different. So you have to build a storage tank to hold and store nutrients, energy, sugars, right, for
Yeah.
photosynthesis, to be able to go into the next phase of reproduction, and that's when that plant starts to reproduce itself, right, and
You
create
got me
the actual
thinking
seed.
outside the box. Like Corey put a fuel gauge of how much fuel he's got left in the tank. And last year, as we went out, Corey's like, "Man, you got a classic yellow stripe." I'm like, "Yeah." So what's that mean? It's fuel gauge. He's like, "You're out of nitrogen. You're out of this." I never
yeah.
thought about it that way, but a leaf could also be your fuel meter, fuel
Absolutely.
gauge.
Absolutely. So it's a solar panel, it's a fuel tank, it's a canopy, right? So that's about building plant structure. The other thing to it is, guys, is we think about in that early stages. We talked about corn. We've not focused on soybeans. Soybeans are just as important on the leaf structure, but early season, there's things that you can do to soybeans to mitigate stress and also influence plant growth to activate axillary branching. Like, for example, there's PGRs on the market like GABA, which is gamma-aminobutyric acid, that'll actually work to induce that axillary branching, which those axillary branches are the ones that hold on to pods. And we actually have some examples of some plants over here.
Okay.
And when you can do that, that's more opportunities for fruiting sites, right? To actually be able to create yield opportunity, right? And put flowers and pods on. So that's that architecture phase. That next one is reproduction. And this is where Mother Nature throws a curveball at us, right? So we think about that first week in August. So, Corey, when you're out walking soybeans, because you walk all your fields, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when it's not 100 degrees out,
Yeah.
95, 100 degrees
Yeah.
out. So you're out there, and it's waist high on you, chest high on me, I'm a midget, right? So as you're walking soybeans, you got this top cluster, right? And we call that the top crop,
Yeah.
right? And we get all excited. And David, you learn this, right? As you now got some acres of your own. This is that next 5 or 6 bushel that you see that you get all excited about, and you're like, all right, here's my this next yield.
Yeah.
And then Mother Nature does what?
Doesn't rain.
She gets dry.
Yeah.
She gets hot.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
what does a soybean plant do?
Starts aborting. Yep.
Right. Kicks those off. Corn, guys. Corn is just as visual. You just have to go digging for
Yeah.
it. Right. You got to go peel them husk back. What corn does is what's called tip back.
Gotcha.
Right. So it'll take those last rings off, and it'll start setting those fruiting sites back. And those fruiting sites are kernels.
Yep.
Right. Instead of pods. So in that reproduction phase, that's a prime example of what we call tip back. So when you look at that you can see there were seeds in there that didn't get pollinated for whatever reason, or it aborted those seeds, right? And it pulled back its yield because it wants to retain this section right here.
Yeah.
So corn does the same thing. It just looks a little different and not as easy to find because you can just walk out there and see the aborted pods.
Yeah, it's very depressing when that does happen. You see them on the ground, you see flat pods.
Yeah.
It's not cool.
Yeah. So that's that reproduction time frame.
So does that show up on every row, every plant, every ear? Because as I walked through our field last year, some of them had stuff like that, and some didn't.
Yeah.
Depends on how even your emergence was.
I see. So all back
All
to
the
the
way-
structure
all
and the
the way
establishment.
Back to the beginning. There's a lot of agronomic influences that can change and dictate. Will every year have it? Will a certain number of years have it? A couple years ago, guys, in central Illinois, I don't know what it is about the good Lord, but he loves that west central Illinois area. And these guys were blessed with rain, where guys like me in Indiana across that state border, we were getting shut off. That spigot was just off.
Yep.
But they had severe tip back in a perfect pollinating weather and I'm talking perfect pollinating weather. But their tip back, they had the question I had for them. I'm like, did you guys have excessive cloud cover? And they're like, oh yeah, we had some excessive cloud cover. And I'm like, was it during pollination, like excessive, like for like over a week? They said we had 11 days consecutive cloud cover. Wow. It is a documented fact that excessive cloud cover during pollination can cause severe tip back, and that's exactly what they saw. So that caused a stress on that plant. It activated that ethylene glycol, caused a stress on that plant, and pulled back that yield potential.
Could we have seen that in those years? We get like smoke coming from like
Haze,
Canadian wildfires and stuff.
Okay, so I want to address that the Canadian smoke. So I thought for sure that I was going to see excessive tip back in that year because of limited photosynthesis, right?
Yeah.
Because the sun's being blocked, and I thought for sure we're going to have some of those issues. It wasn't so much the consistency as that as what I saw on the flip side of things. We saw some abnormally great yields.
Carbon?
Right? Great yields. Carbon, right, David? So the skeletal backbone of every plant is carbon. You know, as agronomists, I love this. We all talk about your nitrogen to sulfur ratios, guys, right?
Yeah.
So, and some agronomists will tell you that you need a 10-to-1, so 10 pounds of nitrogen, 1 pound of sulfur. I think that's too far stretched. You need to narrow that gap up to like an 8-to-1 if you're actually going for yield, because the sulfur is important.
Yep.
What's just as important is nitrogen to carbon. But there's not an agronomist out there, at least not a honest agronomist that's out there that can tell you what that number is, because most of that carbon comes from the atmosphere. And so how do you get that carbon, right? So if you think about that year where we had abnormally good yields, the moral of the story is we need to go set our neighbors on fire and do that again because we had some great yields that year, right? Obviously, we don't want to do that, but that carbon to those plants was energy.
Tanner, didn't they say that down at U.S. Sugar when we went down there? They burn off the fields.
Oh, that was just for biomass.
That was for biomass. That wasn't for carbon. Okay.
Yeah, it's nutrient recycling. So one thing that I do, right, and not to talk too much on products, but every time I get an opportunity, I build carbon into products, right? Because anytime we can get it in there, it's important. So
I got an idea.
What's that?
It's a new product. Have you ever had a smoked old-fashioned?
Yes.
We can start smoking water.
Right on.
And call it smoke. And you put the carbon right on the plant.
Our CEO is a master at old fashions, so we should have him be our formulation chemist on
There
that
you go.
one.
I like it.
Yeah.
Smoke.
So you're literally just going to sell them water in a jug.
No, smoky water.
Smoky water.
That's what I mean. It's just
Concentrated smoky water.
Right on.
So then you can add that to your
It's not even
tender.
clear.
Think so what was that? 21? Was that the year that we had a bunch of smoke? Was it 21 or 22?
I feel like it was more recent than
That's
that.
more recent than that. It was 23, wasn't it?
Yeah, because you're already in
23.
25.
But I remember the yields, like you talked, like it was very surprising. Even some of our poorer fields that we'd never expect. It was like, holy cow, what is this? You know, like, so.
Abnormally big yields.
So if I could put that in a jug.
It'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which phase would that go into, though? Or you just do it all of them?
That's a good, from start to finish, man.
Yeah.
Smoke early, smoke late, right? Smoke early, smoke often.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
That's funny.
you know that
Good
last
long
phase,
smoke.
guys, is called the maturity phase, and this is the one that most of us is. If you're an ag retailer watching this, you'll get this. We're done farming. We're done spraying. We're tired of freaking going out there and running the sprayers, right?
Yeah.
But I'm telling you guys, on that maturity phase, when it gets into filling out kernels or filling out pods, there is money to be made. I've witnessed it. I've experienced this. My recommendations today, especially on soybeans, are to split up our applications and run our fungicide a little bit earlier and then come back and hit both the early like an R2 and then an R4.5 and R5 application with potassium acetate with carbon, right, to make sure that we've got that drive and that energy source. And I've seen some phenomenal yield results and phenomenal ROI in those applications if you have the means to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean money. Guys, I don't mean money by that. What I mean by the means is the time, the ability, the sprayer equipment to physically go get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, you either have to have a high boy sprayer like a Hagee or a drone.
Yeah,
right?
Or a drone, right?
Yeah.
Which is becoming way more popular today.
Yes.
Oh, mercy.
So, which is a huge value. You know, I said and talked to Shelby and Ethan Fight. They went and invested in a drone so they can time those applications because they've witnessed those.
I can't believe you don't have a drone yet, Corey.
I don't have time, Dave. I don't have time.
You don't have the means, right?
Well, I'd rather hire someone that's an expert in it
Right.
because I don't have time to be an expert in it right now. They're cool. I love them. I love talking about them. So potassium acetate on the soybeans?
Yes.
What about on corn late?
So on corn, every high yield guy that I know, right, that pushes the yield, When you look at the demand curve on potassium, most people on demand curves would tell you nitrogen in corn is your biggest demand because that's all we ever focus on as an industry. We always talk about pounds of nitrogen. Guys, the demand on potassium is actually higher late season than what the nitrogen is. Both are very large, but it actually peaks higher than nitrogen. So that late season application, to me, I've seen great results. Right? And you don't need tons. You don't need to put gallons upon gallons out there. You need the right source. And that right source is potassium acetate. Texas A&M did a study where they looked at all forms of potassium. It was potassium sulfates, thiosulfates, carbonates, nitrates. And the most efficient one by 4.5 times was potassium acetate when it came to a foliar uptake and utilization inside of a plant. So if you're going to do it, use a potassium acetate.
Right.
But don't just stop there. Guys, one thing that we talk about at AgXplore is the 5th R in fertilizer management. You guys always hear about the right product, right time, right place, right source. We contend that 5th R is the right technology, and that's to make that fertilizer, one, more available or more efficient in the soil, or once it gets inside of a plant, how does the plant metabolize it? How do we make it more efficient with mobility, right? So having that right technology to complement that potassium acetate is where I've seen real results.
Okay.
So what is the potassium acetate doing? Is it saving kernels? Is it adding weight?
So the biggest thing with potassium when you look at corn and soybean, and this applies to other crops like the wheat and other small grains, it drives test weight. Boys, we get paid by pounds. We don't get paid by volume.
That's
right?
not what Twitter says.
That's not what Twitter says.
Yeah.
I saw on TikTok that's not the way it works.
That's a huge debate.
Wholeheartedly, adamantly agree with those guys.
Yeah.
So I had an old boy in a meeting one time. He said, test weight doesn't matter. And I'm like, oh, yeah? Would you like to pull 47-pound test weight on your corn and just haul that to the mill and see if you get docked? Tell me it doesn't matter. Right? We get paid by weight. And if I can turn that from 56 into 60, 62, 63-pound test weight, that's awesome.
Yep.
What about this? Have you guys ever seen 62-pound test weight on soybeans?
No, not on soybeans.
So Dr. Sean Castile out of Purdue University, came out with a paper that caught my eye. It says, we give up on crops too early. I'm like, oh, really? Sean, teach me. Tell me more. Because I'll be honest with you guys, universities take a long time before they put their name on something.
Yeah.
Well, Sean came out and said, guys, there's money to be made with late season applications of potassium. And he's like, look, as an industry, we go a little bit too late with our disease control and R3 because we're trying to split hairs. We're trying to make it last as long as we possibly can, right? Well, a lot of times, guys, there's disease before we see it, right? Plants run a temperature before they exhibit the actual disease. Take a look at tar spot, right, on corn. But on soybeans, he's like, look, I encourage people to move the recommendations to an R2, late R2 application on your fungicide insecticide pass. Put some foliar potassium with it then. Turn around and come out at this R4.5 to R5 and hit it with potassium acetate again. Now, I always include our octane product, which is a carbon-based product, on top of our KSB or NutriK. And the first year that I did, I had a cooperative that did 500 acres. He started sending trucks to the elevator, and the elevator started getting suspicious. And they sent one of his trucks to a neighboring elevator to have it probed because they thought he was weighting his trucks, either with sand or putting some moisture with it, or some water with it, right? And they ended up calling him, and his name is Pat Nally. And they said, Pat, what did you do to your soybeans? And he's like, what's the matter with my soybeans? He's like, we have 62-pound test weight on your soybeans. This is the first time we'd ever done this. And all of a sudden, we started to experience that late season potassium application. We hit it twice at R2 and R4.5. What it's doing is it doesn't make any more beans. It makes beans bigger, makes them more dense. And it does the same with corn, right? It packs that kernel.
Yeah.
Right? It's directly attributed to that test weight.
Yeah.
Right? Early season during the architectural phases, potassium is directly attributed to stalk diameter and leaf width. But late season is directly attributed to test weight, right? Packing that kernel.
So a private label product, what puts weight on you?
Bourbon.
No. Chips.
So do we need to
that carrot cake from last night?
That carrot cake was definitely going to put some pounds on it.
That's the new private label. This is the carrot cake.
Carrot cake.
Yep.
Cake.
Cake.
We call it beef cake.
Beef cake.
All
There we
right,
go.
so far we've come up with smoke and cake.
Smoke and cake.
Oh my gosh. I can get high test weight on corn. I can get 64-pound test weight on corn. Not consistently, but I see it.
Yeah.
62 is pretty consistent. Beans, I can't get to 60.
Yeah.
And that's what they're supposed to be.
It's tough, right? And it's too many times, guys, we put all of our eggs in one basket, and that basket's called the soil, right? That's obviously the first and foremost thing that we should manage as farmers, right? And as agronomists is our soil base because we have to have it.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you guys, when you manage an actual crop and think differently, because too many times we just manage the soil, if we actually manage that plant as it's growing and have the ability to call audibles, right? Like in a football game, we call audibles to make changes on the go. In farming, we should have that ability to do that on our farms. Like, for example, a couple years ago, I had an abnormally dry end of May to pollination, okay? And we had hit it with our PGR Architect product that's got the nutrients plus the GABA in it. And then it sat there and managed through that stress event, but I knew something was happening. Plants drink nutrients from the soil. They don't eat them, right?
Yeah.
It's got to have moisture there to drink them. And I knew that plant was not taking up potassium, and I made a V10, V12 application of potassium before that fungicide passed. And I'm telling you guys, that paid dividends that year. I don't normally do that,
Yeah.
but that's a year where I needed to do that because it wasn't drinking it.
Are you monitoring bricks at all?
Absolutely. So
What are bricks?
So when bricks are BRIX to a plant, and those are sugars, those are natural sugars. They're
Oh,
essential,
okay. I've heard
essential
that.
for the whole photosynthetic process. Which there's two stages of photosynthesis. One is a daytime period, and then a nighttime photorespiration period. And sugars are essential, right? You know, any of you guys putting sugars on a crop today? Anybody?
I have.
Yep. Did you just go to like Sam's Club?
That was the first one I
Yeah.
did, and then there's more complex sugars that we've put in with some nitrogen and stuff.
Can I give a little education on sugars?
Let's do it.
Go for it.
So in a plant uses multiple sugars, multiple oses, right? So Corey, you're kind of you give me the vibe of a Red Bull vodka kind of guy, right?
It's more Dave,
Oh,
but
yeah, you're right.
college.
You look at this jacket.
College,
This
maybe.
dude's definitely hit the Red Bull,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So Dave, when you drink that Red Bull and you get a quick spark of energy, and then all of a sudden you just crash, right?
Yep.
Right, so that's what happens when plants just have one type of sugar.
Okay.
When you give it just glucose, which is that bag sugar, right?
Yeah.
Putting a pound per acre out there.
Yep.
I know it's cheap, right? Sub $1.
Yeah.
It's okay, right? What you're doing is giving only one essential sugars, and you're throwing that balance off. Plants require multiple types of sugars. I'll give you an example. The nighttime photorespiration period, sucrose goes to fructose and forms acetate. And that's the final stage of that acetate formation, which is plant's natural energy molecule.
Gotcha.
And nowhere in there is glucose ever used. Right? So you're only feeding one sugar. So like back in 2019, I was asked to develop a product for sugars. And I said, okay, here's the deal. Anybody can put sugar in a tank, right? So we developed something that's got 7 different sugars. I put 2 on the label. It's called octane, but it's we got to hold some things proprietary, right?
Yeah.
But on top of that, I didn't want to just give it a sugar source where it depends on an external sugar source. I wanted to coach that plant along to make its own sugars. So there's this pathway inside of a plant called the jasmonic pathway.
Got its own
That's-
pancreas then.
Yep, its own pancreas, right? So it's called the jasmonic pathway, which will never be on a test in life. Just know that it makes its own sugars called bricks, right? So what we did is we put a biostimulant in that induces the formation of bricks through the jasmonic pathway. Then on top of that, we introduced a biochemically extracted humic acid, which is another carbon compound to complement the formation of bricks. Right? And the skeletal backbone of every plant is carbon, so we gave another carbon source. And we built what's now called octane, which is one of our most popular products, right? Because it actually manages the photosynthetic properties of that plant.
Yep. And if the plant is high in bricks, bugs cannot digest that, right?
Right.
So they kind of go to a different crop.
Yes.
So is there different crops? Like there's people in the world that are diabetic, and their sugar is different than my sugar. Is there that with crops, or are they all the same?
You know, Dave, that's going to take a better agronomist than me to answer that.
Okay,
one, so,
fair enough.
Yep.
You were going to say something else, though.
I don't remember what it is.
The bugs
eat-
can't digest sugar.
Oh yeah. There's some claims by some companies that are out there that talk about the sugars when they put it on that they kill bugs. I'm going to make none of them claims, right? That's a
Right.
whole different level of.
Farmers, you do it all. So should your technology. Level up your equipment with the latest innovations from AgLeader.
From sure force downforce control and sure speed high accuracy planting to right spot individual nozzle control, AgLeader has you covered.
And now, with the new In-Command Go displays, you get unparalleled visibility and control, keeping critical information at your fingertips. Upgrade today and reap the benefits this season.
Visit agleader.com or contact your local AgLeader dealer to get started.
Right. But in general, if they can't eat that, they're going to go
Yeah.
to something else, or just in general, a healthier plant, right, is going to fend off disease better. And
Look at tar spot.
Yeah.
The number one thing outside of a fungicide, which there's no fungicide that completely stops it, right? You can manage through tar spot. The best thing you can do for tar spot is have a healthy, well-balanced plant with sugars and with nutrients, right? Another thing that I didn't talk about yet is the importance of micronutrients. So I get this a lot. We have some foliars that have got several different micronutrients in it, and I get people that'll say, well, that's just a shotgun approach to pick up something that's deficient on like zinc, right, or copper. And I promise you, those products like Architect or Nitro Ultra for our portfolio aren't enough to fix a deficiency. They're in there to support photosynthesis. Remember my story about building a big factory and then equipment with the right equipment? That equipment are the micronutrients, your copper, iron, manganese, zinc, molybdenum, boron, right? Those are the equipment that accept sunlight and physically do something with it. If you build that great big fat wide leaf and then you don't have that equipment inside there, congratulations, you just build a great big fat wide leaf for nothing.
Right.
Right? And those micronutrients, when you see those in combination, they're built to accept sunlight and turn that into energy for that plant.
Yeah, it's not needed in large quantities, but the right timing, the right product,
exactly.
right?
Timing. So you say something so important, Corey. If you get outside the boundaries of when things are supposed to go on, don't use them. And I want to talk about growth staging plants, okay? So we have some examples that are over here of some plants I think you're going to bring into this conversation when you edit this. So when you look at these, I want to talk about V-staging of plants. There's a couple different methodologies of V-staging. The one that's accepted and by the book is to start with that first round tip leaf called the coleoptile. That's V1.
Yes.
And then you count alternate leaves from there, right? And it goes V1, 2, 3, and back and forth. So that's the official way to grow stage by any chemical label, by any understanding the agronomics behind it. So then there are some that teach you don't count that leaf. I adamantly, wholeheartedly disagree with that.
Yeah.
So understand that methodology. You can understand what's going on inside that plant.
Yep.
Like, for example, our Architect product, I tell people I want it on between V3 and V5, preferably V4, V at V4 to V5, right? So that way I've got surface area, and I'm hitting it when it's determining number of kernels around. Can you hand me that first one, David? So this is an example of not doing it, an example of doing it. This is 16 around. This one's set 2 more. Have I seen more than 2 more kernels set? Absolutely. Right? Yeah. I've seen 4, right? And more. But this is real life. This is consistency of what I see in an application at that time frame with the right products. And if I can go from 16 around to 18 around, that's a 12.5% increase in kernel set. Now that does not mean, farmers, it does not mean a 12.5% increase in yield guaranteed. By itself, data will tell you it's 2 to 3%.
Yeah.
If you're on 200 bushel corn, that's another 4 to 6 bushel.
Yeah.
That's cute. Right? Yeah. That's nice. You paid for it. You made a little money. But what if you actually manage it in the subsequent stages at reproduction, maturity, and you turn that 2 to 3% into a 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15%? Because I've seen it. I have witnessed it if you manage that crop.
Right. Well, I imagine it's the same story as like the leaf. You build a big leaf, but then you don't feed it. Like, good job. If you put more kernels on and you don't fill them,
that's right.
Big whoop, right?
So you're saying at V3, V4, then that's where we're changing tip back with like an Architect product.
Not the tip back. We're setting number of kernels around.
You're setting the number of kernels.
So here's what we're doing. This is the 2 examples of the setting kernels around. So here's my 16 around. This is my 18 around.
Okay.
Hitting it between V3 and V5. Now, if I don't do that, okay, something I can do to influence yield if I miss that application is I can come back late season and we have a product that's the first in the market called Onward Now Onward Max, which is a late season PGR, which is a plant growth hormone package that tells a plant to drop stress and retain the fruiting site. So it reduces the tip back, David.
Okay.
And this is what you'll get. It's still 16 around because you can't go back in time and set more kernels around. But I can influence the retention of kernels and set those rings around. And we consistently see a 5% yield bump 91% of the time. So this is what you will have if you only do a late season PGR. And guys, don't think that all PGRs can be used all season long. If you put Gib acid or IBA on late, you will tell that plant to spend its energy on roots followed by shoots, and you'll make that thing look like a beer bottle. And we all like beer bottles, but not on our corn plants. Right? So that's what would happen if you missed the early application and only did the late application.
Yep. I think I said in the first time we interviewed you that I want to do a show just on PGRs because those are probably the most confusing thing to
I
me.
love
You know,
PGRs.
like I don't even want to get into those weeds right now because I think we'd confuse everybody. But like,
It's a whole nother hour, buddy.
yeah, yeah. So we want to go through what you guys have here because I've never seen fake plants that are so accurate, and you're clearly trying to tell a story here. So could you explain what you have going? at the
Okay.
booth?
So if you looked at that brick of soil over there, that's talking about that foundation phase and the importance of managing fertilizer and managing residue on that crop, on that field. After that, these first two ones that are in the casings, you'll notice that we have small plants, little V3 plants, that show the seminal root system and the formation of the nodal root system. We have one that's untreated and one that's treated, so something that would have a technology like Adrenaline or our GrowPack AI, which is our biggest, fastest growing product, is a seed treatment, a planter box seed treatment. And we show that importance of creating that bigger root system at that stage. After that, we get into those next series of plants. On the inside, you see here is the untreated. On the outside is the treated. Those are the exact same age of plants as far as physiological growth stage. They both start at V5, they go to V6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay? What that shows you is the ones on the right, on the outside of our booth here, those are the ones that's got like an architect application at V4. So that they exponentially get bigger. It's the exact same physiological age, but we've made a bigger plant. And I don't know a farmer around that would argue that that's not important to do.
Right.
Right? That is return on investment on doing that. So that's managing through the architecture phase. And then after that, I got some reproduction plants. And what I show on there is if you look, we had the company that made these plants for us. We had the husk pulled back a little ways. Those are both 16 around. One's got tip back and one does not get tip back. And that one without tip back that looks like this plant, right, that filled out that end of that year, that's the one that had that Onward Max application with the fungicide that dropped that stress and it told it to photosynthesize and mobilize nutrient source to sink and fill those kernels out. The final one that's by itself, that's the full result of a managed product, right, of a managed crop. So we had a early season application with Architect followed by a late season Onward Max application. And that's that one that's 18 around. It looks like this. It's 18 around and it's got no tip back, right? More fruiting sites. It's more dense. It's a managed crop. Heavier test weight. So
What was the population of these replicas?
so on the population of these replicas were 36,000 on a 30-inch spacing.
Okay.
Over to the other side, guys, we have soybeans. This is a fun one to tell. So on soybeans, so the first two, the shorter ones, you see an early vegetative, early architecture. And what you see there is a more robust plant on the second one in, and that's the one that would have had an architect application at that V2, V3 time frame. So it's got more plant biomass. But it also starts the formation of axillary branching, which is what you see in the next ones. So the third one in is an untreated plant.
You said that's more pods. Axillary branching?
Axillary branch will hold on to pods.
So
and
more
creates
pods,
right?
more pods, more beans, more crop, more money.
Yep.
Got it.
So at the end, the end one is the result of, you see the axillary branches, David, that's got the pods hanging off, going off sideways? Those are fruiting site branches, the axillary branches.
What are they called?
Axillary.
Oh, fruit. What was the fruit inside?
The fruiting sites.
Fruiting sites. Okay.
The pods. So on that one, you have to create those early, and that comes from that architecture application of the architect product, right? From there, you want to retain those pods, right? You don't want it to get hot and dry and Mother Nature kick them off like we talked about earlier. That's that late season application of a PGR like Onward Max, right? To retain those fruiting sites. And that's why you see a fully loaded plant at the end. That's a true managed soybean plant, top to bottom.
I'm going to let you guys land this. I have to go to the next one.
Nah, we're
You
not
guys are in
stopping
good hands.
this. I'm not cutting this one off. That's fascinating, and this is a resource that everybody got to see at Commodity.
Yeah.
You're not throwing these displays away.
No way. No, I've got way too much invested into these. These will be used all over the country. You will see these show up in other spots around the country.
That's what I was hoping. So our listeners would have the opportunity to see this.
Yes.
To be able to look, feel, touch, and get that explanation that they just heard. We're going to do our best to overlay that on the video so you can see it when you watch on YouTube or Spotify.
Yeah.
But it is something to see. It was going to give you a hard time because it doesn't look like it's Iowa corn.
That's Indiana corn right there is what that is. So Tanner, what's fun about this is if you look at these are incredibly lifelike. Even the color is just spot on. These are actual ears that Dr. John Murphy, who's in charge of our agronomy department, he and I pulled out of real fields from real life applications. Untreated, architect only, no architect but Onward Max, an Architect followed by Onward Max. These are the results in real life that we see. We didn't go out and pull the biggest one around. We could have put a 20 or 22 around in this one, right? And so this great big year. That's not real, right? We want to be real and real practical. That's what we wanted to do.
So we've talked a ton of agronomy, and when I think agronomy, I think soil, I think nutrients, I think all the letters, PKN, et cetera, potassium, got them all, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at your display over here, and we haven't talked. We've talked leaf, we've talked up, but we haven't talked anything as it starts to pollinate.
Yeah.
So is there something I need to know agronomically about tasseling and pollination?
Yep. So let's go back to PGRs for a second. One way that I can influence pollen viability is through a component called kinetin. Kinetin can be used all season long, so it can be used at germination all the way through tasseling corn.
Okay.
So what it works on is helping pollen stay viable in stressful conditions. So when it gets really hot, say you had some late planted corn and that by the time you get your GDUs and it goes into pollination, it's pretty late and it's starting to get hot and dry, and those abiotic stresses are impacting that pollen viability.
Okay.
What it'll do is it'll force that ethylene glycol down inside that plant, and it'll make that pollen more viable. And that's where you'll see a reduced tip back, right? And reduced skips. So if you notice in this, we don't see any skips, the aborted kernels that are in there, and because we made that pollen more viable. Another thing that, guys, one of our practices that we have today in farming, especially on corn, is guys with these great big fancy row crop units that got the high boys, right, with the lift kits on it. I love it because they're going out with gallonage and they're hitting it right before the corn tassels. One thing you will notice if you put like an Onward Max product with it, it will put out tassels. It'll rocket tassels out. That's something that Ethan and Shelby talked about yesterday doing an episode here, was when they did that with Veltima, it just rocketed the tassels out, and it made it very consistent across the field.
That's I'm enjoying this, right? And I appreciate that you make it relatable so I can understand, as well as our listeners. And it's been a pleasure, again, to see you guys at work in this booth. The conversations that you had, especially the staff that you have. So out of those conversations, what are producers most concerned about or trying to prepare for this 25 crop year?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is obviously ROI, focusing on ROI. And, that's things that we got to think about that investment. A lot of folks are thinking about cutting back on fertilizer this next year, those that have already put it on in the fall. And those are legitimate conversations. So as we think about your soil, a lot of us as farmers done a really good job year after year of investing into our soils and building that bank. And there comes a point in time where guys are going to start feeding on that bank. That doesn't mean that we can abandon the crop. The thing that we're trying to educate people on is stop just focusing on just the soil, but actually manage that crop throughout a growing season through these 5 phases. And that's just where it comes into ROI conversation. There's an exercise. Can I talk about my ROI exercise that we do?
Absolutely.
So there's a whiteboard off to the side. That whiteboard there's for multiple reasons, but one primary reason.
I was just going to try and beat Dave in tic-tac-toe.
Right on.
Yeah.
I got money on you, Tanner. Right. So, but David, you get a lot of people that show up at your farm now that you farm, and they want to sell your products.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And they have that one product that makes 20 bushel an acre, right? And
Everybody's got more bushels.
Everybody in this industry seems to think that's the hot spot for farmers to have one product make 20 bushel, and that's crap. There's no one product that consistently does that. What I've witnessed, if you manage a crop, you can get returns like that, but it's multiple applications of managing your crop.
Right.
But people always do this after I get done talking. They're like, man, if I do all these things, I've spent $100 an acre. Well, if you actually think about it and look at the economics behind it, it is your lowest cost, most highest margin bushel that you will produce on the farm with these extra additives. So if I took your numbers from Iowa, and let's just play a fun game here real quick. If you had, what's an average corn yield in central Iowa?
207.
207, okay? So if I got 207.
So I didn't mean to make it hard with a 7. How about 210? 210's easier.
We'll go 210.
Didn't choose 200, didn't choose 205 or 210.
Yep.
It's not. Nobody ever says.
207.3. Let's get real accurate on this. So
what is your idea of the perfect date?
Yep.
So
April 15th. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. You just need a light jacket.
So here's the exercise I like to do with guys. Give me your average yield, right? So 207 it is. It doesn't matter number. That's it, right? It's real numbers.
Yep.
So then let's look at the price we can sell it for this year. What's selling price of corn today? If I had to book it for December corn today, what would I get?
I hedged ahead at 465.
465. So if you took, can you do some math with me real quick? If you get your calculator out,
I can.
Let's just do it live. Let's do this on air here.
Be a good
Hey,
test.
Rachel.
Now I still got a basis there, but yeah.
What'd you ask?
Okay.
He's better with a calculator. All right, Tanner, you
All right.
got this?
Don't you?
Yeah, just give me a sec.
Yep. Back on?
I'm back.
All right.
All right, I got my calculator ready. Let's fire this up.
Okay, so we've already done the first calculation. We took 207 times 465.
962.55.
Okay, that's our total revenue per acre. Okay. What does it cost to put an acre of corn out? And I'm talking everything. Seed, fertilizer, chemical, land rent, equipment, fuel, everything, the insurance, everything that goes into it. What's it cost to put an acre out in central Iowa?
Well, right now it's pretty damn close to 962.55.
I was going to say it's really close to that, yeah.
So you tell me. I'm not going to use my numbers. You guys tell me.
Let's. I believe some of the conversations that we've had are targeting that positive margin of about $55 an acre. So let's call it $910 is our cost.
$910 is our cost.
Okay.
Okay. So we have revenues of $962.55 minus $910. That leaves us $52.55 in profit, okay, on a per acre basis.
Mm-hmm.
So we invested, guys. You spent $910 to make $52.
Yep.
Okay. So I want to talk to you about very simple economics. I'm going to talk to you about manage your crop in 3 stages with just 3 simple products. Right? And I have to use mine, right? Because that's what I know. Our Grow Pack AI on corn is about $1.85 grower investment. And you notice how I'm calling this an investment and not a cost?
Yep.
Right? Because this is no different than going to Morgan Stanley or Edward Jones and giving them money and expecting a return on the money. These are investment products. So I'm gonna invest $1.85. So keep the math with me. I got $1.85 there. Let's say I run a quart of Architect at that V4 time frame, and I've got, let's call it $12 on that. Let's just round it off and make it easy. Call it $12 on that. Because it's a PGR plus a foliar. You can't build the product for $12. It costs you more than that. Let's use 12, right? So let's go high and use 12. So I'm at $13.85.
Yep.
And then after that, I want to invest another $8 with my fungicide and drop that ethylene and mobilize nutrient source to sink and help that crop reduce that tip back. Okay, and we're going to, so we're at $8. So we're up to
That's your onward max?
Onward max. So
$8?
Yep.
21.85.
So we're at $21.85. Okay, so that's my investment. So instead of a cost, I'm going to call it an investment per acre. All right. So where's my agronomist in the room? Hey, Dr. John Murphy. Dr. John Murphy, I need you to play along with me here, buddy.
Paging
If
Dr.
I
Murphy.
If I use Grow Pack AI on corn, what's a typical research? And he does all of our research, so this man knows. On our consistent, what do we see a bushel return when we run Grow Pack AI on corn at 3 ounces per unit? Easy 5?
Easy 5.
Easy 5, I think. So you've seen it multiple times at 5 bushel. Okay, I'm not going to go that high. I'm going to take that much lower. Let's just call it 3 bushel, John. Okay, let's say we only get 3 bushel out of something that we're basically everybody's doing it already. Everybody's using graphite and talc. This is a replacement. Yeah, so very cheap replacement. So let's say we get 3 bushel there. On Architect, John, if I hit it at the right time, let's call it V4, what do you consistently see? Give me that range to what you see. So 10% of your yield, that's a number of, give me a bushel number.
So 207, so what's 10% of that? 20?
20. I'm not even gonna go close to there. Can I say 8 bushel? Yep. Let's say we only get 8 bushels out of that application. So with those plants that are over there that you'll show,
Yep.
those ones that exponentially get larger as it gets older, let's say we only get 8 bushels. So now we're at 3 plus 8, so we're at 11 bushel.
Yep.
Okay. Now onward max. This one I don't need John for this one. With 91% of the time we see a 5% yield increase.
Okay.
So on 200 bushel corn, 5% is 10
Yep,
bushel.
another 10 bushel.
Right? But I'm going to go less than that. Again, I'm going to go drop that down, give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's say we only do 7. Okay? So what are we at? We're at 3,
15,
8,
16, 17,
7.
18.
So we're 18 bushel. So this is where I need the calculator again. I'm going to do the same exact economics. So on a
18 times 465.
Yep.
We're $83 per acre. Better, $83.70, but if we minus out the $21.85 it cost us per acre, 0.85, we netted $61.85.
So we netted $61.85.
Yep.
So we invested $18
we invested $21. That's what we put in. Extra.
And our revenue was
$83.70.
$83.70. Our profit was $61.85.
Yep.
Take $61.85 divided by $52.55.
And what's that number?
So we have a 117.7% increase on-farm profit. We invested $21.85, and we increased our bottom line profit.
Doubled it.
We doubled it, more than doubled it.
More than doubled it.
Guys, here's the thing. You don't have to go out and spend $100 an acre to make a difference, right? You don't have to invest that. Sometimes these marginal gains along the way with things you're already doing. I didn't ask for an extra pass. We're talking about products and passes that you're already making, right? You're going to stick that seed in the ground with a planter. You're going to do a post herbicide pass for most of us, not everybody, but most of us. And most of us are spraying fungicide. So the stuff that goes with it. And what I've done is we've taken and increased our on-farm profit by 117%. Those are real numbers. I didn't take the numbers that we typically see, which had been even higher than that.
Yep.
I cut those back, and you guys gave me your real life numbers. You're spending $900 and some odd to make 50. Right now we can invest $21 and make
Make
60.
another 60.
Right.
No, that was very clear. I'm imagining when we edit this video up that not only when you talked about the Jasmonic pathway, you know, some psychedelic features is
Right.
that, but I can just see Dave with numbers rolling around his head as he's trying to do the math to light bulb go off of it does pay.
Yep. Guys, to me, our story at AgX is we want to be the best in education at agronomics followed by economics, right? You have to understand the why a plant does what it does and why we make recommendations the way that we do, right? And then you have to understand, David, the ROI. When we talk about managing a crop, right? I don't want to come to your farm, David, and never just talk about one product. I
And
want
so-
to talk about your crop and what it needs.
Not to try to shoot holes in any of it. All this we were having somebody put this on anyway. So you said not increased pass. There's no more diesel fuel, no more time, because you're doing each one of these things.
You have fixed expense at that 900
The grow pack, the architect, the onward. Those are all times when I'm probably having the co-op come out and do something anyway.
You're planting, right? So you're planting. You got
Yep.
a planter tractor. It's already rolling. All that does is replace graphite and talc.
Okay.
So that you have that expensive going out there. That's a fixed cost built into your $900 and some dollars. After that, your post trip, you're already paying the co-op or
Yep.
whoever to go out and make that trip. It's a tank additive is all that it
Got
is.
it. Okay.
And on that fungicide application, whether you're using a drone, a helicopter, or an airplane.
We droned on last year. Yep.
You're already paying that drone to go out there.
Yep.
It's 6.4 ounces per acre.
Okay.
Right?
Dave's all about efficiency. He had the drone go out there and put twice as amount of fungicide on it as he needed to
Yeah.
because he wanted to make sure that pass was
That's
worth
right.
it.
You
That's
got it, right?
Okay. Very good.
And we didn't even talk about like the potassium influence. I'm talking about 3 simple products that are everyday common products for us that are there are baseline products, and then based off understanding your guys' farms and your farming practices, we'll start adding the XR5 sulfur, the Nutri-K, or those other type products, the octane type products. But that's significant return, guys. And today, when we talk about bottom line, we as farmers need this.
I think you guys need a jingle. I've been thinking about this whole time. Tanner, I wrote it down. He said it's like kids, right? You got to give them the right vitamins. So I thought, I'm a Flintstone kid. So I wrote, I'm an AgX kid. What's
Right
our
on.
population? 35,000 strong and growing.
Oh, I like that. You should go into marketing, Dave.
I tell you what, they always they just
You can tell this is the end of the show.
my attention span was gone 20 minutes ago, but we're back.
I was getting ready to say, there's no silver bullet. You talked about a lot of different things that work together.
Yeah.
But I feel like after the conversation we had yesterday with Billy, that Billy's the silver bullet. You just call Billy.
That's right.
Call
Billy.
AgX. That's your silver bullet. It comes with a lot more than just one shot.
That's right.
But no, this has been a pleasure, and I'm excited for our listeners to have access to this. Obviously, we did mention AgX products, but in the grand scheme of things, these are the approach that our listeners need to take to really put a plan together that they can stick to to raise the best crop that they can possibly raise in 2025, so that is something they've controlled, and let the other factors that they can't control do what they do.
Manage your crop.
So if folks do want to reach out, how do they hook up with you guys at AgX?
Yeah, so our website is agxplore.com, right? So you find us there on there. We have a contact page on there. If you send a email to our marketing team, it'll go into Bryce Erdman, and he'll direct it to the right person that needs to address your questions. So we're pretty prompt on responses. So that's the best way to get a hold of us.
Well, I knew it was going to be fun. I knew that the conversation was going to be valuable. I want to say thank you again for taking the time to do this. I want to say thank you also for hosting us humbly in your booth with these really, really state-of-the-art displays. So it's about as many times as I can say thank you. I'm going to say it one more time. Thanks.
Tanner, David, thank you guys.
Hey, thanks.
Appreciate it, guys.